Today we celebrate this feast of St. Matthias, when Judas went off and killed himself after turning Jesus over to the authorities. There were only 11 apostles left, and so Peter said, we need to follow what Scripture says. And Scripture said that another should take his place, and so they cast lots and they came up with Matthias. I was thinking about what it must have been like for Joseph, the other man, or Barsabbas, he was also called. What it was like for him. It was kind of like being on a playground and getting picked last for a pickup game of football or soccer or kick the can. But in reality, there were no losers. They were all followers of Christ. And Matthias took that position knowing what a great honor it was, but also knowing that it probably meant he would have to give his life in service of the church. And he did. We wear red because he was martyred for the faith that he loved so much, for the Christ that he loved so much. And that gospel, Jesus is talking to the people he loves the most just before he celebrated the Last Supper and just before he died on the cross. And he tells them, greater love has no one than this, than to be willing to lay down your life for another person. And all of the apostles were willing to do that. And because they were willing to do that, they took it so seriously. The faith grew and grew and grew. One day alone, 3,000 people were baptized. That willingness to give yourself out of love to someone else, to lay down your life for someone else, is something that inspires other people. Just about a year ago today, there was a young couple, Riley Howell and his girlfriend in North Carolina at the university. They were all excited because a new Star Wars movie was coming out, The Rise of Skywalker. They were excited that they were going to go and see it around Christmas time, but the history goes way beyond that. Riley grew up in North Carolina with his little brother, and they loved Star Wars, anything Star Wars. They collected all the figures. They had lightsabers that they would play in the backyard for hours on end, battling. And so knowing that this movie was coming out was something exciting, something they looked forward to at Christmas time, but God had other plans. In May of last year, Riley was in a classroom when a gunman came in and started firing at random at people. He looked around, there was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, and so he did the next best thing. He took the fight to the gunman. He charged at him with all his might and hit him and tackled him and knocked him right on the ground, and they were able to take the gun off of him. In the process, Riley was killed. He gave his life for many people who were perfect strangers, because he knew it was the right thing to do in that moment. But the story doesn't end there. They had newspaper reports of what happened, and the chief of police was asked, did he really tackle this man? And he said, from what I understand, it was more than a tackle. It was something that Troy Polamalu would have been proud of. Took him right off his feet. And he saved lives in the process. And as the reporters asked about him, they learned about his love of Star Wars. And a total stranger from another state wrote to Lucasfilms, the people that produced the Star Wars movies. And a week before Christmas of this year, when the new movie came out, a book came out that explained the background and the history of the movie and all of the characters in it. Included in the cast of characters was a new Jedi Master named Riley Howell. He was named a Jedi Master in the book because they wanted to show that they appreciated that he was willing to give his life for another. When we do that, we are an image of Christ. Not all of us are called to give our lives in a single heroic action, whether it's on a battlefield or in a classroom when a gang is shooting, or a firefighter rushing into a building that's on fire to save a little baby. Some people are called to do that, a single act of courage, but all of us are called to a daily act of courage, to lay down our lives for others, to sacrifice and die to ourselves just a little bit every day. It's like being a child at home and doing what your mom asks you to do, like cleaning your room or taking the trash out the first time, or not yelling or hitting your little brother or sister when they take your toy. It's being patient when your husband or wife comes home from work and they're really in a bad mood and say something gruff. It's not minding when you spend all day making dinner and everyone eats and then just leaves the table and you have to do the dishes. It's trusting that you're doing these acts not to get a compliment, but doing them out of love. It's those little sacrifices we make that make all the difference in our lives. It's what grows the love within us, not just for Christ, but for one another. That kind of sacrifice is something that's not new to this parish and to the parishes in the Beaver Valley. All you have to do is go down into the food pantry down in Good Samaritan and see tables stacked and stacked with food. Food that will be given away, and then more food comes the next day, or diapers for little babies. We give the food out mostly not to people from the parish. Mostly it's just poor people in the neighborhood who just have nowhere else to turn. They may not have unemployment checks, and they may not even have a job, or they may have been living hand to mouth even before the pandemic hit. They may not even know what the inside of a Catholic church looks like, but they know what Christ looks like. He's got scraggly hair and an old t-shirt and a mask on his face, or she has hair that's beautiful and long and blonde with a little bit of gray streaks in there because she can't go to the beauty parlor, and she too has a mask on. Make no doubt about it, you are the face of Christ to hundreds, if not thousands of people. And so this day we have to ask ourselves, how will I die just a little bit to myself that others might live and come to know and love and serve Jesus Christ?